Before we dive into the sun-drenched terraces of the Mediterranean and the dark undercurrents of international espionage, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. We are exposing the operations the world was never meant to see, uncovering the machinery of shadow wars that define our reality. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a briefing. Now, let's open the file. To the casual observer walking the marble floors of the Sapphire Coast Resort in Cyprus, Samir Al-Khalil was just another wealthy expatriate enjoying the fruits of early retirement. He wore linen shirts that cost more than a monthly salary in Beirut, smoked Cuban cigars with a practiced nonchalance, and tipped the staff with the kind of generosity that ensures silence. He was charming, soft-spoken, and impeccably groomed, a man who looked like he made his fortune in shipping or perhaps old-world textiles. But inside the windowless briefing rooms of the Mossad headquarters in Tel Aviv, Al-Khalil was known by a different name, the Valve. He was not a trigger puller. He had never planted an IED on a dusty road in southern Lebanon, nor had he ever strapped a vest to a teenager. His hands were manicured, free of callus and gunpowder residue. Yet, intelligence analysts estimated that Samir Al-Khalil was responsible for more destruction than a battalion of soldiers. He was the chief financier for Hezbollah's external operations unit. He was the man who turned Iranian oil revenue into untraceable digital currency, who moved cash through the Hawala networks of West Africa, and who ensured that when a cell in South America or Eastern Europe needed operational funds, the money appeared as if by magic. For 3 years, Israel had been trying to shut the valve. Cyber operations against his accounts had failed. His encryption was military-grade, designed by Russian specialists. Diplomatic pressure to freeze his assets had stalled. He hid his wealth behind a labyrinth of shell companies registered in Panama, the Cayman Islands, and Singapore. He was a ghost in the machine, a man who existed only in the spaces between binary codes. Then, in the spring of 2008, a signal intelligence unit, Unit 8200, intercepted a fragmented communication from a satellite phone registered to a shell company in Liberia. It wasn't a bank transfer, it was a reservation. The ghost was tired. The ghost wanted a vacation. The intercept revealed that Al-Khalil would be spending 2 weeks at the Sapphire Coast, an ultra-exclusive resort near Limassol, Cyprus. It was neutral ground, a playground for Russian oligarchs and European royalty, a place where privacy was the primary commodity. For the planners in the Mossad's Caesarea unit, the division responsible for special operations abroad, this was the window they had been waiting for. But a direct hit was out of the question. Cyprus was a friendly nation, a close neighbor. A noisy assassination involving silenced pistols in a hotel lobby, like the Dubai operation that would happen years later, carried too much diplomatic risk. Furthermore, simply killing Al-Khalil was not enough. If he died, the access codes to millions of dollars in terror financing would die with him. Or worse, be transferred to a successor within hours. The objective was changed from elimination to acquisition. They needed his laptop. They needed his retinal scan. They needed the digital keys that he carried on an encrypted drive around his neck. They needed to bankrupt the organization before they neutralized the man. But how do you get close to a man who trusts no one? A man whose security detail consists of hardened veterans of the Bekaa Valley? You don't send a soldier. You don't send a spy who looks like a spy. You send a love story. The selection process was brutal. The mission required operatives who possessed a specific paradoxical set of skills. They had to be hyper-alert, trained in close-quarters combat and high-speed electronic theft. Yet they had to project an aura of complete, vacuous relaxation. They needed to be people who could spend hours by a pool discussing the trivialities of wedding planning and honeymoon destinations, while mentally mapping security camera blind spots. They chose Leo and Elena. Leo was actually Ari, a 29-year-old former commando from the Sayeret Matkal, who had transitioned into intelligence work after a knee injury. He had the rugged, quiet demeanor of a man who worked with machines rather than people. His cover identity was perfect, a software architect from Berlin, successful, slightly introverted, and completely devoted to his new wife. Elena was Yael. She was younger, 26, a prodigy from the Mossad's training academy who specialized in human intelligence, or HUMINT. She could read a room in seconds, identifying the alpha, the insecure, the watcher, and the threat. Her cover was that of a fashion buyer for a boutique chain in Munich. Outgoing, bubbly, perhaps a little superficial, the kind of woman who posted photos of her cocktails and laughed a little too loudly. Together they were the perfect cliché, the newlywed German couple, drunk on love and overpriced champagne, oblivious to the world around them. The legend must be your skin, the mission commander told them during the final briefing in a safe house in Herzliya. You are not playing a role. For the next 3 weeks, you are Leo and Elena. You sleep like them, you eat like them, you argue like them. If Al-Khalil's security chief looks into your eyes, he must see only a boring, happy German tourist. If he sees even a flicker of intelligence, you are dead. The preparation was exhaustive. They spent 2 weeks in a flat in Berlin to perfect their accents and their shared history. They created a digital footprint that went back years. Facebook posts, holiday photos from places they had never been, doctored by the agency's graphic specialists, fake work emails, a wedding website with a registry full of expensive kitchenware. They even staged a wedding photo shoot in a Bavarian garden, wearing the clothes they would pack for Cyprus. The chemistry between Ari and Yael had to be manufactured. In reality, they were colleagues, barely friends. Ari was taciturn, focused on the mission parameters. Yael was intuitive, reliant on feel and instinct. They clashed during the prep. "You're holding my hand like a gun," Yael hissed during a practice dinner. Leo adores Elena. He doesn't grip her like he's extracting her from a hot zone. "Soften your hands." "I'm trying to be protective," Ari countered. "Leo isn't protective in a military way," she corrected. "He's possessive in a romantic way. There is a difference. Look at me like I'm the most expensive thing you own, not the target." By the time they boarded the Lufthansa flight to Larnaca, the transformation was complete. They wore matching platinum bands. Their passports were masterpieces of forgery, utilizing real German passport numbers from deceased citizens, a technique that was risky but necessary for deep cover. In their luggage, hidden within the lining of a toiletry bag and inside the battery compartment of a high-end underwater camera, were the tools of their trade: a cloning device for keycards, a high-powered localized signal jammer, and a tiny vial of a fast-acting, untraceable cardiac stimulant. They were landing in paradise to walk into a cage with a tiger. The Sapphire Coast Resort was a fortress disguised as a sanctuary, built into a cliffside overlooking the azure waters of the Mediterranean. It consisted of private villas, tiered infinity pools, and gardens lush with bougainvillea and jasmine. It was designed to keep the world out. Security was discreet but pervasive. Men in dark polos and sunglasses stood in the shadows of the palm trees. Cameras were hidden in the ornamental light fixtures. Al-Khalil had rented the Imperial Villa, a standalone compound at the far end of the resort, separated from the main hotel by a dense grove of olive trees. It had its own pool, its own beach access, and crucially for the Mossad team, its own dedicated fiber optic internet line. Leo and Elena checked into a suite in the main building, arguably the honeymoon suite, expensive enough to justify their cover but close enough to the common areas where Al-Khalil was known to hold court. The first 2 days were spent doing exactly nothing. This was the discipline of the trade. An amateur would immediately start scanning for the target. A professional waits. They lay by the main pool, reading paperbacks. They ordered room service. They took selfies at sunset. They let the resort staff get used to them. They became part of the furniture, the German couple in 304. It was on the third evening that they made visual contact. They were at the resort's open-air seafood restaurant, the Mariner. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in violent shades of purple and orange. A hush fell over the staff as a group entered. Samir Al-Khalil walked in the center. He looked older than his file photos, his hair thinned, his face tanned to the color of old leather. He was laughing at something one of his companions said. His entourage was the problem. There were 4 men. 2 were clearly bodyguards, thick-necked, wearing jackets despite the heat to conceal sidearms. 1 was a younger man, perhaps an assistant or a protege, and the 4th was the man Mossad Intel had warned them about. Imad Mugnieh's cousin, allegedly, a man known only as the Wolf. He was the head of security. He didn't sit. He stood near the entrance of the terrace, scanning every face, every hand movement. Target acquired. Yael whispered, bringing a glass of wine to her lips, her eyes locked lovingly on Ari's face, but her peripheral vision absorbing everything. The wolf is jumpy. I see him, Ari replied, cutting his steak with precise, calm movements. He's checking the exits. He's carrying on the left hip. Al-Khalil is relaxed, though. He feels safe here. That's our inn, Yael said. The wolf protects the body, but Al-Khalil feeds the ego. We need to feed the ego. The plan was not to approach Al-Khalil directly. That would trigger the wolf's defenses. They had to make Al-Khalil approach them. They knew from the dossier that Al-Khalil considered himself a connoisseur of fine watches. It was his vanity. He wore a Patek Philippe that cost more than a house. Ari was wearing a vintage Rolex Daytona, a specific model from the 1970s, a Paul Newman, that the Mossad technical division had acquired specifically for this operation. It was rare, distinctive, and irresistible to a collector. The trap was baited. Now they just had to wait for the shark to smell the blood. The opportunity came the following afternoon at the exclusive adults-only infinity pool. It was a quiet area where the sound of water was broken only by the turning of magazine pages. Al-Khalil was there, lying on a teak lounger, reading a French newspaper. The wolf sat 3 loungers away, drinking sparkling water, watching the perimeter. Ari and Yael arrived. Yael wore a stunning white swimsuit, drawing eyes, including Al-Khalil's. But she only had eyes for Ari. They settled onto loungers near the pool edge. Ari sat up, adjusting the umbrella. As he did, the sunlight caught the face of the vintage Rolex. He let his hand rest on the arm of the chair, the watch facing outward, a beacon of horological rarity. 10 minutes passed. Al-Khalil lowered his newspaper. He squinted. He took off his sunglasses. The hook was set. He stood up and walked toward the pool edge, passing close to Ari. He paused, feigning a casual glance. "Excuse me," Al-Khalil said, his voice smooth, accented with the distinctive lilt of the Levantine upper class. "I hope I am not intruding, but is that a Paul Newman?" Ari looked up, shielding his eyes, playing the part of the friendly but slightly surprised tourist. "Oh yeah, it is. Good eye. Most people just think it's an old watch." Al-Khalil smiled, a genuine smile of a fanatic meeting a fellow believer. "Old? It is a piece of history, my friend. I have been looking for one in that condition for 5 years. May I?" "Of course," Ari said, unbuckling the watch and handing it over, a gesture of trust that disarmed Al-Khalil. The wolf was instantly on alert, stepping forward, his hand hovering near his waist. But Al-Khalil waved him off with a dismissive flick of his wrist. "It's fine, Imad. Look at this dial. It's exquisite. I'm Leo," Ari said, extending a hand. "And this is my wife, Elena. We are on our honeymoon." "Congratulations," Al-Khalil said, handing the watch back with reverence. "I am Samir, a humble admirer of fine things. You have excellent taste, Leo." Elena picked it out. Ari lied smoothly, pulling Yael into the narrative. "She has the eye. I just wear it. A woman who understands the value of time," Al-Khalil said, bowing slightly to Yael. "A rare treasure. You must join me for a drink, I insist. It is rare to find civilized conversation in these places. Usually it is just Russians talking about oil prices." Yael laughed, a bright, infectious sound. "We'd love to, but only one. We have a spa appointment at 4. It was the perfect refusal. It showed they weren't desperate for his company, which only made him want it more. The dynamic was established. They were peers, wealthy Europeans, not sycophants. For the next hour, they sat by the pool, drinking iced tea. The conversation steered clear of politics or business. They talked about vintage cars, the best tailoring in Milan, and the decline of service in Paris. Ari played the part of the tech-wealthy stoic. Yael played the vibrant social butterfly. Underneath the table, concealed in Yael's beach bag, a high-gain audio recorder was capturing every frequency of Al-Khalil's voice. They weren't just making friends. They were building a voice-print biometric profile, but the real danger was the wolf. He didn't speak. He stood behind Al-Khalil's chair, his dark eyes boring into Ari. He wasn't looking at the watch. He was looking at Ari's hands, his posture, the way he scanned the horizon. He was looking for the soldier inside the tourist. Ari knew he was being dissected. He made a conscious effort to slouch, to let his belly relax, to move with the slight clumsiness of a civilian. He picked up his glass with his whole hand, not the tactical grip he had used for a decade. "So, Leo," Al-Khalil said, leaning in, "what line of business affords a man such a watch?" "Software," Ari said boringly. "Database architecture. Very dull. Clouds and servers." "Data is the new oil," Al-Khalil mused. "Security of data, that is the new gold." "Exactly," Ari said. "Everything is vulnerable these days." For a split second, Al-Khalil's eyes hardened. A flash of the terror Financier beneath the resort guest. Yes, everything is vulnerable. The connection had been made, but to spring the trap, they needed access to the Imperial Villa. The resort Wi-Fi was segmented. They couldn't hack Al-Khalil's private server from the public network without triggering alarms. They needed to be within range of his local Bluetooth and near-field communication, NFC devices. They needed to be inside his walls. 2 days after the pool encounter, the invitation came. A concierge delivered a heavy, cream-colored envelope to their suite. "Mr. and Mrs. Hoffner, Samir would be honored if you would join him for a private dinner at his villa this evening. 8 Mihran p.m. Dress code, casual elegance." "He bit," Yael said, holding the card up to the light. "Casual elegance. I hate that term." "It means the wolf ran a background check and we passed," Ari said. He was sitting at the small desk, dismantling the underwater camera to extract the cloning device. It looked like a standard smartphone, but its internals were modified to copy RFID signals and skim data from devices within a 3-meter radius. "Or," Ari continued, "he didn't find anything, and he wants to interrogate us closer to home." "Our legend is solid," Yael said, applying lipstick in the mirror. "The backstopping unit in Berlin planted the employment records and the university transcript 6 months ago. Even if he calls the company in Munich, the receptionist is one of ours. She'll gush about how much she misses Elena. Imad is the variable," Ari murmured. "He's going to separate us. He'll want to test me." "Then let him," Yael said, turning to face him. She looked stunning in an emerald green evening gown that accentuated her back. "While he's busy measuring your testosterone, I'll be getting close to the wallet." The plan for the evening was divided into 2 phases. Phase 1, social integration. Get Al-Khalil comfortable, get him drinking. Phase 2, the extraction. Ari needed to place the cloning device near Al-Khalil's jacket, where he kept his keycard and his primary phone. Meanwhile, Yael needed to distract Al-Khalil long enough for Ari to deploy a sniffer, a small USB device, into the villa's router if possible, or at least map the network topology. They walked to the Imperial Villa under the stars. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and the sea. As they approached the gate, 2 guards stopped them. They were patted down, professionally, thoroughly. "No phones," one guard said in broken English. "Mr. Samir values privacy." "Of course," Ari said, handing over his decoy phone, a clean device with regular photos and messages. Yael did the same. They walked up the stone path. The villa was magnificent, lit by soft amber lights. Al-Khalil was waiting on the patio, holding a glass of wine. "Leo, Elena, welcome to my humble home," he boomed. But as they stepped onto the patio, Ari noticed something that wasn't in the plan. There was another guest, a man in a gray suit, sitting in the shadows. He was thin, pale, with wire-rimmed glasses. He didn't look like a tourist. He looked like a lawyer or an accountant. "Allow me to introduce Mr. K," Al-Khalil said, gesturing to the man. "My associate from Zurich. He is joining us for business, but I told him he must meet the charming couple from Germany." Ari's internal alarm bells rang. Mr. K was likely a courier or a facilitator. His presence meant a transaction was happening tonight. This raised the stakes. It also meant the security would be tighter. "Charmed," Yael said, extending her hand. Mr. K took it limp, his hand cold. "German," Mr. K said. His accent was Swiss German, precise and clipped. "Munich, you said?" "Yes," Yael smiled. "Do you know the city?" "I know it well," Mr. K said. his eyes behind the glasses magnifying his suspicion. I lived in Schwabing for 5 years. Yael didn't blink. Oh, lovely. Near the English Garden? We lived just 2 streets over from the university. It was a test. Schwabing was a district in Munich. If she had hesitated, the game would be over. A beautiful area, Mr. K said, relaxing slightly, but expensive. Tell me about it, Ari laughed. That's why I have to work so hard. They sat down to dinner. The food was exquisite, grilled octopus, lamb, mezzi, but the tension was palpable. The wolf stood in the doorway of the villa, watching the table. Midway through the meal, Al-Khalil turned to Ari. Leo, you said you work in data security. I have a question. Theoretical, of course. If one wanted to move a large file, a very sensitive file, without it being intercepted by, say, the Americans or the Israelis, what platform would you use? The table went silent. This wasn't small talk. This was a probe. Ari wiped his mouth with a napkin. He took a sip of wine. He needed to sound like an expert, but not too much of an expert. If he sounded like a spy, he was dead. If he sounded like an idiot, he was useless. Encryption is math, Ari said slowly. Math can be broken if you have enough computing power. The only safe way to move data is not to move it digitally at all. Air gap it, put it on a hard drive, encrypt the drive, and carry it by hand. Old school. Al-Khalil smiled. He looked at Mr. K. You see, I told you. The old ways are the best. Ari realized then what was happening. The transfer wasn't going to be a wire transaction. It was physical. The data, the codes, the ledger was on a drive, and it was likely in the room right now. As the dinner wound down, the atmosphere shifted. Al-Khalil was in high spirits, buoyed by the wine and the confirmation of his own biases regarding security. He stood up. Imad, bring the cognac, the 1920 vintage. The wolf hesitated, casting a dark look at Ari, but he obeyed, disappearing into the house. Elena, Al-Khalil said, turning his charm on Yael. You must see the view from the upper terrace. It is spectacular. Leo and Mr. K are going to bore us with talk of numbers. Come. This was the split. Yael was being separated. I'd love to, Yael said, standing up gracefully. She shot a micro-glance at Ari. Be careful. As Yael and Al-Khalil walked up the external stairs to the roof terrace, Ari was left with the Swiss accountant. You are not typical Germans, Mr. K said quietly, staring at his wine. How so? Ari asked. You are too alert, Mr. K said. Most tourists, they look at the view. You look at the exits. Ari's heart rate slowed. This was combat physiology kicking in. I served in the Bundeswehr, Ari lied. Conscription, old habits, and my wife. She is just high energy. Mr. K seemed to weigh this. Service makes men paranoid. I understand. Upstairs, Yael was playing a dangerous game. Al-Khalil was showing her the moonlit bay, standing close, his cologne overpowering. It is a lonely life, Elena, he murmured. To have everything, but to always be looking over your shoulder. Why do you look over your shoulder, Samir? She asked innocently. You seem like a man who controls his world. There are people, powerful people, who do not like the cause I support, he said vaguely. He leaned against the railing. But tonight I feel safe. Perhaps it is your company. Yael laughed softly. I'm just a fashion buyer, Samir. No, he said, turning to her. You are sharp. I see it in your eyes. You are not just a buyer. Yael froze. Had he made her? You are a woman of ambition, he concluded. Like my mother, she ruled the family. Yael exhaled internally. Ambition keeps us young. Downstairs, the wolf returned with the cognac. He poured 3 glasses. As he handed one to Ari, he deliberately spilled a few drops on Ari's linen trousers. Oh, my apologies, the wolf said, his voice devoid of sincerity. It happens, Ari said, grabbing a napkin. Let me help you, the wolf said, grabbing Ari's arm. His grip was steel. He wasn't helping. He was checking for a wire. He ran his hand down Ari's side, feeling for a weapon or a transmitter. Ari forced himself not to react, not to break the arm that was holding him. He let himself be manhandled like a civilian. "It's fine, really," Ari said, pulling away awkwardly. "Just whine." The wolf stared at him. He hadn't found a wire, but he wasn't satisfied. "You have strong arms for a computer man." "I climb," Ari said. "Rock climbing. Indoor gyms. It's popular in Berlin." The wolf grunted. He didn't buy it. At that moment, Yael and Al-Khalil returned. The tension broke, but the danger level had redlined. The wolf whispered something in Al-Khalil's ear. Al-Khalil frowned, then looked at the couple with a slightly cooled expression. "My friends," Al-Khalil said, "it is getting late, and I have business to conclude with Mr. K in the morning. I must bid you good night." The dismissal was abrupt. They had survived the dinner, but they hadn't gotten the data. And worse, the wolf was now actively suspicious. As they walked back to the hotel, the silence between them was heavy. "He knows something is off," Ari said when they reached the safety of their room after sweeping it for bugs. "Imad is going to tighten the net. We won't get another invitation." "We don't need an invitation," Yael said, kicking off her heels. She reached into her bra and pulled out a small metallic object. It was a key, not a digital key card, but a physical, small brass key. Ari stared at it. "How?" "When we were on the terrace," Yael said. "He showed me his collection of antique telescopes. He opened a display cabinet. He left the key on the ledge for a second when he poured me a drink. I palmed it. I swapped it with a similar-looking key from my clutch, the dummy key from the kit. What does it open?" "I don't know," Yael admitted. "But he keeps it on a chain attached to his belt loop. He detached it to open the cabinet. If he keeps it that close, it opens something important." "The safe," Ari said. "The physical safe where he keeps the hard drive." The discovery of the key changed the operational parameters. They had a physical access tool, but they still needed to get into the villa without being shot by the wolf's men. And they needed to do it before Al-Khalil concluded his business with Mr. K and moved the funds. The window was closing. Mr. K was leaving in 24 hours. Mossad HQ sent a coded update via a secure burst transmission to their specialized laptop disguised as an iPad. Intel suggests transfer scheduled for 14 Harubar tomorrow. Transfer requires dual authentication, digital key, target has it, plus biometric, target, plus physical ledger, in safe. You must intercept before 14/9. "We can't go in quietly," Ari said. "The security is too tight. We need a distraction, a big one." "A fire?" Yael suggested. "Too dangerous. If the resort evacuates, Al-Khalil will be moved by his security detail to a secure location. We'll lose him. We need to separate the security from the villa." Ari mused. "What does Imad care about more than Al-Khalil?" "Nothing," Yael said. "Wait. Threats. He cares about threats. If he thinks there is an immediate physical threat to the boss coming from the outside, he will collapse the perimeter. He'll move Al-Khalil to the panic room in the basement. That leaves the upper floors exposed for a short window." "Risky," Ari said. "If we trigger a false alarm, they might just shoot anything that moves." "We have the heartbreaker," Yael said, referring to the vial of cardiac stimulant. "But we can't get close enough to use it." "We don't use it on Al-Khalil," Ari said, a plan forming. "We use the environment." The plan was audacious. They would use the resort's own luxury against it. The following morning, Al-Khalil was scheduled for a private session in the resort's hyperbaric oxygen chamber, a trendy wellness treatment he swore by. It was in the spa complex, but he insisted on a private portable unit being brought to his villa's pool house. "If we can spike the oxygen mix or hack the pressure controls," Ari said, "we can induce a medical emergency. Not death, but panic. Symptoms of a stroke or heart attack. They will call an ambulance. Chaos. In the confusion, we enter." "How do we hack a hyperbaric chamber in his villa?" "We don't," Ari said. "We hack the technician bringing it." The technician was a local Cypriot named Costa. He was partial to online gambling and had a significant debt on a poker site hosted on a server that Mossad had compromised years ago. It took one phone call from a debt collector, a Mossad agent in Tel Aviv speaking Greek, to convince Costa to take a sick day. Ari would take his place. It was a flimsy cover. Ari spoke passable Greek, but he didn't look like Costa. He would have to wear a mask, plausible in a medical setting, and a cap. It's suicide, Yael said. The wolf will recognize your build. Not if I'm wearing the full medical PPE, Ari said. They love hygiene. I'll be a shapeless blob in a hazmat suit. And me? You are the spotter. You stay at the pool. If the wolf leaves the villa to accompany the ambulance, you go in the back way using the key. You find the safe. You get the ledger. And if the wolf stays, then I have to deal with him. At 10 a.m., Ari rolled the hyperbaric equipment cart up the path to the Imperial Villa. He was sweating under the plastic protective suit. He wore a surgical mask and a face shield. The guards stopped him. Papers. Ari handed over a forged work order and Costa's ID badge. The photo on the badge had been digitally altered to resemble Ari's eyes, the only part of him visible. The guard grunted and waved him through. Al-Khalil was by the pool, wearing a plush robe. The wolf was there, watching. You are not the usual guy, the wolf said instantly. Costa is sick, Ari grunted in Greek, keeping his head down, fiddling with the oxygen tanks. Flu. Very bad. The wolf stared at him for a long, agonizing minute. Set it up, quickly. Ari began assembling the chamber. As he connected the oxygen lines, he cracked the valve on a small canister he had concealed in the tubing. It wasn't a poison. It was a mild, colorless gas that induced rapid heartbeat, dizziness, and shortness of breath, mimicking a severe cardiac event. Ready, sir, Ari mumbled. Al-Khalil stepped into the chamber. Set it to 1.5 atmospheres. Ari sealed the unit. He turned the dial. The gas began to flow. 3 minutes later, Al-Khalil started thrashing. He clawed at his throat. His face turned red. Open it! The wolf screamed, rushing forward. Ari fumbled with the latch, deliberately stalling for a few seconds to ensure the panic set in. It's jammed. Pressure equalization. Open it, or I kill you. The wolf drew his gun. Ari popped the seal. The wolf dragged Al-Khalil out. The financier was gasping, clutching his chest. My heart, I can't breathe. Call the medic! The wolf shouted to his men. Secure the perimeter! Get the car! We go to the hospital! Chaos erupted. Guards ran toward the gates. The wolf hoisted Al-Khalil onto his shoulder. You! The wolf pointed at Ari. You come! You explain what you did. This was not part of the plan. I stay here, Ari said. Equipment. The wolf didn't argue. He backhanded Ari across the face shield, knocking him into the pool. Stay there. If he dies, you die. The wolf ran out with Al-Khalil. The convoy of SUVs roared away. The villa was empty, or so it seemed. Ari pulled himself out of the pool, stripping off the heavy suit. He spoke into his comms. Wolf is gone. Target is gone. Villa is clear. Elena, move. Yael was already moving. She vaulted the low garden wall at the back of the villa. She ran across the lawn, avoiding the cameras she had mapped out earlier. She reached the patio doors. Locked. She used a glass cutter and a suction cup to silently remove a pane. She slipped inside. The villa was silent. She ran up the stairs to the master bedroom. This was where the telescope cabinet was. She found the wall safe behind a painting, a cliché, but Al-Khalil was a traditionalist. She inserted the brass key. It turned, but there was a digital keypad as well. Dual authentication. Ari, she whispered. Keypad, 6 digits. Try the birthday, Ari said, rushing up the stairs behind her. Too obvious. Try the date of the Munich massacre, Ari said grimly. September 5th, 72, 050972. Yael punched it in. Error. Think like him, Yael muttered. Vanity. History. She looked around the room. There was a framed photo of a young man holding an AK-47. Al-Khalil in his youth. The date on the photo was handwritten, 1982. The year Hezbollah was founded. She typed 198200. Click. The safe swung open. Inside lay a thick leather ledger and a ruggedized hard drive. Jackpot, Yael whispered. She grabbed them. We have company, Ari hissed from the window. One SUV was coming back. The wolf hadn't gone to the hospital. He had sent the men. He had stayed behind to secure the asset, the money. He knows, Ari said. He figured out it was a diversion. They were trapped on the second floor. The wolf and 2 guards were entering the front door. Up, Ari said. Roof. They ran to the terrace. There was a trellis running down the side of the building, covered in thick vines. "Go," Ari ordered Yael. "Get the drive to the drop point. I'll hold them." "No heroics," Yael said, clutching the drive. "We leave together." The door to the terrace burst open. The wolf stood there, gun raised. He saw them. He didn't see Leo and Elena anymore. He saw Mossad. "I knew it," the wolf snarled. The watch was too perfect. He fired. Ari dove, tackling Yael behind the stone bar counter. Bullets chipped the masonry. Ari drew his weapon, a compact Glock 26 he had retrieved from the hidden compartment in the medical cart. He returned fire, 2 controlled shots. One hit the wolf in the shoulder, spinning him around. "Jump!" Ari yelled. They vaulted over the railing, crashing into the thick canopy of the olive trees below. Branches whipped their faces. They hit the ground hard. "Run!" They sprinted through the olive grove, heading for the beach. The wolf, injured but furious, was shouting orders from the balcony. Guards were swarming from the perimeter. They reached the sand. A small Zodiac boat, piloted by a local Scion helper, was waiting 50 meters offshore, engine idling. They waded into the water. Bullets splashed around them. Ari turned and fired the last of his magazine to suppress the guards on the beach. They hauled themselves into the Zodiac. The pilot gunned the engine. The boat surged forward, bouncing over the waves, leaving the Sapphire Coast resort behind in a wake of white foam. 3 days later, in a safe house in Athens, Ari sat on the balcony, nursing a bruised rib. Yael was inside, watching the news on CNN. Breaking news: Lebanese Financier. Samir al-Khalil has been arrested in Cyprus on charges of money laundering and terrorism financing. Anonymous sources leaked thousands of documents implicating him and several high-ranking officials in an international embezzlement scheme. The leak had been Mossad. Within hours of acquiring the drive, the cyber division had decrypted the ledger. They didn't just steal the money, they published the receipts. They showed that al-Khalil had been stealing from Hezbollah to fund his own lavish lifestyle. This was the true kill. Hezbollah wouldn't let him live. The wolf wouldn't be able to protect him from his own organization. By the time the Cypriot police arrested him at the hospital, where he was recovering from his gas-induced heart attack, a contract had already been put out on his head by his former masters in Beirut. The valve was shut, not by a bullet, but by the truth, delivered by a fake honeymoon. Yael walked out to the balcony, holding 2 beers. She handed one to Ari. "Leo and Elena are officially retired," she said. "Shame," Ari smiled, taking a sip. "I was starting to like the watch. We have to return it to the archives tomorrow," she said, sitting next to him. "And the honeymoon?" Ari asked, looking at her. The adrenaline had faded, leaving a strange, quiet intimacy between them. They had survived. "The honeymoon is over, Ari," she said softly. "Back to the real world." She clinked her bottle against his. "To the next one. To the next one." They sat in silence, watching the sun set over the Aegean, 2 ghosts waiting for the phone to ring again.